sort of feel like I'm virtually traveling, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, since we didn't get to really travel, it's nice to travel with Zoom. Wow. Oh, yes.
That is moving fast.
That is
I
moving
see a lot
really
of,
fast.
there's a lot of Washington. Do you see a lot of
Lots of
Washington?
Washington. Hey, Vancouver. Hey, that's exciting. Sorry. I love Vancouver. Seattle, St. Louis, Ohio. There we go. A little closer to our house. There's a couple Michigans. Someone from Saline.
Did you see Saline, Michigan?
I did.
Well done with your quick reading skills. That's that master's in reading at work right there.
I have a master's degree in reading, yes. Georgia, there we go. Seattle.
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started as people are coming in. Everyone, welcome. We are so glad that you could join us here for our second distance learning webinar. My name is Ann Nutter-Kaufman. I'm a manager in our teacher quality department in Washington, D.C. at the NEA headquarters. And it's my pleasure to host and be a learner along with you from some of our great member leaders who are EdTech geniuses and online geniuses that we are learning from. I want to let you know that we are recording the webinar. They will be posted in multiple places, the recording when it is done. The recording from last week is up. You can find it at www.nea.org/webinars, and we will tell you multiple email addresses multiple times, so you do not have to remember that at this moment. I am now going to pass it to our illustrious Executive Board member, George Sheridan. George?
Well, we'll begin by acknowledging that wherever we are in the United States, every one of us participating in this call resides and works and is meeting on the traditional land served by America's first people. I am on Miwok land. We honor America's first peoples and all elders, past, present, and emerging, and we're called on to learn and share what we learn about the tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in telling the story of America. This webinar is part of NEA's mission to ensure that every student can succeed. We know that in many cases, members and students lack appropriate hardware and in many cases lack adequate broadband access. But it's not just a matter of technology. It's also about applying what we know about effective instruction to a different setting. With distance learning, how do we promote the same kind of interactive learning that we foster when we're physically present with our students? How can we take advantage of the opportunities technology offers for team teaching and for student-directed learning? This webinar is one way we're trying to support members in your professional work right now. There's no such thing as a standard child. There's no one best way to teach and learn, and no one has all the right answers. But we do have some best practices around distance learning that we can share here and on our website, educatingthroughcrisis.org. We, the members of NEA, are the experts, and all of the distance learning webinars are led by experienced EdTech members and staff. At the end of this webinar, we will ask for you to fill out a short evaluation form that identifies other topics you're interested in if we've somehow missed the mark here. And now, our member facilitators, Sarah and Kelly, will get us started.
I always have that moment where I can't find my microphone, no matter how many times we've done this. So Kelly and I just want to say thank you again for having us. Kelly and I are both proud Michigan Education Association members and therefore proud NEA members. We're excited and happy to be with you to share what we've been working on this summer. And Kelly, do you want to talk about the procedures here?
Sure. So we want to just quickly point out a few webinar procedures. Due to the large number of participants attending this webinar, your camera and microphone will be muted. Okay. Please post questions in the Q&A box. Use the chat feature for other comments or ideas. Let's collaborate. Please try to ask questions concisely, as there are a lot of people on this webinar. We'll happily answer as many of your questions as we can after the webinar. And our facilitators will also try to respond to your questions during the presentation.
So Kelly and I just want to ask you, along with the rest of our NEA team, let's utilize and basically take advantage of this giant group that we have and share out what you're finding on social media. You can use hashtag #NEAEdPractice, and you can @NEA Today. Also, if you click on this link and check out NEA Ed Communities, you can join a professional learning network, which we'll talk about more in our presentation today. So today, participants will develop a definition of quality online practice, internalize quality practices, create a culture of quality ed tech use, and gain a set of possible online tools to use. And as you know, we have an hour, so we're going to try to make sure that we work along, answer questions as we can, and continue to put those in the Q&A box so that our great team of facilitators can answer them as quickly as possible. I'll go first since I'm already unmuted. My name is Sarah Van Loo. I am a K-5 STEAM educator in Ann Arbor Public Schools in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I push into classrooms in 2 buildings and teach science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. My bachelor's degree is in accounting information systems. My teaching certification is in visual arts education, and I have a master's of arts in educational technology from Michigan State. Kelly and I both were part of our team in March, April, and May that helped to support the teachers in our district as we made the move to remote learning. And that's how we began with this team that you're going to see here today. Go ahead, Kel.
And I'm Kelly Newton, and I actually am also a STEAM educator in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was a classroom teacher for 15 years in grades kindergarten through 4th grade before I took this job. Now I actually push into classrooms and help regular ed teachers do all kinds of science, technology, engineering, art, and math lessons. So I'm going to keep mine brief. That's me.
Okay, so these are other amazing facilitators. These 6 awesome individuals are also educators across Michigan, and they're part of our blended learning team that has been facilitating professional development across the country this summer. So you can follow any one of them on Twitter, except Leslie will have to get her on Twitter, and they are answering questions in the Q&A box. If you have questions, like Kelly said earlier, questions in the Q&A box. If you have comments or want to participate in the community, put those notes in the chat. And Kelly, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Great. Okay, so what exactly are quality practices for online instruction? So we have outlined 12, and I'm going to hand that to you, Sarah.
Okay, really quickly, we'll dive into all of these a little deeper, but we're going to set clear expectations with our students, create instructor presence, use real-world applications, teach for online students, define learning objectives, provide prompt feedback, engage our students, build community online, practice self-care, support diverse learners, exercise quality ed tech practices, and participate in a PLN. So these are 12 practices that we've identified with some research for quality practices for remote learning and remote instruction. And one thing I want to point out as we go along, you'll see that each of our slides corresponds to the colors that you see here. And also when you download this presentation, if you're interested in going straight to practicing self-care, you can click on the number 9 and it'll launch you right over there. And we have embedded this list of items throughout the presentation so that you can keep track of where we are in the presentation. And I want to thank a couple of our facilitators for throwing that in there for us. And this is a practice that we use in Ann Arbor in our remote learning. So it's a great way to showcase one good practice.
So let's get started. Our very first quality practice is set clear expectations. Now, this is not going to be drastically different than what you do in the classroom, but online, it's extremely important. So you're going to help kids dive into the content by providing them with a detailed syllabus, outline, or plan, and you're going to share that with both students and families. You're going to make sure you have clear due dates and a schedule, and that you have clear, understandable instructions for any tasks that the kids have to complete. A couple tips: make sure your kids understand what they're expected to do and how they're supposed to do it and how they're supposed to turn it in. Make sure kids have a set of norms when they're online and they know exactly what is expected behavior-wise and task-wise. And I put a helpful link there, guys. If you've ever visited the Slides Mania website, I would highly encourage you to check out her weekly planner. It's beautiful and it links nicely into Google Classroom and Seesaw and pretty much any LMS that you might like to use. So here's a quick example from one of our co-facilitators, Chris Thomas, of how to set clear expectations. Make sure that everybody knows exactly what's coming, and you share this template with both students and families, and they know exactly what to expect. And I'm going to go quickly here because we already have. So we're finished with set clear expectations. Our second one is create instructor presence. Now, instructor presence is you sharing who you are as an educator with your kids. So make sure the kids see your face. Make sure you post announcements. Make sure you appear on video. Make sure you participate in discussions with them. Show your personality, your passion, and your expertise. Make sure you make eye contact with your camera. Be aware of your own facial expressions. Make sure you have appropriate dress, appropriate voice, and you're taking appropriate pauses during a lesson. Are you giving think time? And then we have a few helpful links there right next door. There's quite a few of them. And I'll go ahead, Sarah. And that's just a couple quick examples. So that's yours truly with her kiddos on a Google Meet. And make sure that the kids can indeed see your face, hear your voice, and know who you are as a teacher.
One thing I want to quickly point out here is that I noticed that when I'm presenting but Kelly's talking, the closed captioning is not getting updated. And I wonder if we should take a second to pass it back and forth, or does anybody have a specific thought on that? Okay. We'll keep this up, but if there's somebody that's missing the closed captioning, please throw something in the chat and they will let us know that. Okay, so we've checked off the first two already. The next one we're going to talk about is using real world applications. And this is something that Kelly and I are fortunate in the curriculum that we teach in Ann Arbor that we're able to do automatically. I mean, it's built right into our sessions. Every unit that we teach starts with a story where children get to discover what the problem is in the story and why. Why do we use real world application? Well, it's for motivation. When we use real world application in our lessons, students don't have to ask, why do we need to learn this? Because everything that they're doing automatically applies to that problem that they're trying to solve. And it lets us show students how they'll apply what they're learning in real life because they are doing it. In order to solve whatever problem they're working on, they learn the skills and strategies that they need for that problem solution. So as you're teaching, think about this. Make sure you discuss the reasons you are teaching what you're teaching. And consider looking a little bit into project-based learning. There's an article here from Edutopia and also from PBL Works, which is kind of the gold standard in project and problem-based learning. So check those out. In our springtime, we were unable to continue teaching the curriculum that we teach to some extent because of the remote learning. We do a lot of hands-on stuff with students and a lot of specific supplies. So second graders had been learning about properties of matter, color, texture, size, shape, things like that. We gave them an activity and we used the app Seesaw. So we gave them an activity to do where they were supposed to sort laundry. And if you want to check that out, it's right here. But it asks them to kind of sort the laundry in as many ways as they can think of and then let us know what they did to sort the laundry. And ideally, when they were finished, maybe they helped their parents with getting the laundry sorted. Maybe not. Maybe there were some reds in with the socks. If there were, sorry, moms and dads. But students gave us really good feedback about that. It was a practical way for them to practice that skill and knowledge that they had learned in school. For those of you who teach the upper grade levels, this is a middle school example. This was a design challenge in Tinkercad that my husband Bill Van Loo used with his students. And they were to design, build, and share a model that they 3D modeled on the computer of an obstacle course, a playground, a skate park, or some other design of their choice. And then they had to basically describe what they were going to design. And having that real world, like concrete goal helped them to learn the skill of the 3D modeling because they had some way, like they had a specific reason to apply that knowledge. All right, so we've gotten through our first 3 points here. And if you need a link to the slide deck, it's right here. Here we go. And back to you, Kelly.
And on to our fourth strategy. So teach for online students. Now, teaching online is obviously very different from teaching in the classroom. So we have to orient our kiddos to the online course. So please be mindful that you break your kids' learning into smaller chunks. Make sure you have a pattern that's predictable of activity and due dates. Describe expectations for online participation, communication, and netiquette. Make sure you provide technical support information. Do not presume that every child and every family member knows how to use the tools that you are using. A few tips: explicitly teach digital citizenship, explicitly teach netiquette, and explicitly teach students how to use the platform that you are teaching with. Now I have a lot of links here. I would highly recommend that you visit Common Sense Education if you haven't done so. They have lovely resources for all grade levels on digital citizenship. I have a nice link there for netiquette guidelines. You can use that at pretty much any grade level, even with adults. And then for those of you who are elementary teachers like I am, there's a couple links for Brain Pop on digital etiquette and distance learning. Now, these are just a couple examples from my Seesaw class. So make sure you create little short how-to videos that can help families use the tool that you are teaching with. So if you're using Seesaw, this is just an example, but you could do the same thing with Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology or whatever LMS you happen to be using in your district. Now this is a lovely template that was designed in Ann Arbor Public Schools by Evelyn Daughtery, Anna Gonzalez, and Ann Reeder. And this daily schedule template is meant to work in Schoology. You're going to notice that it's set up with numbers for math, book for reading, lovely test tube there for science, and then they have different independent activities lower in the bottom. Each day is color coded. And if you go to the next slide, Sarah, you're going to notice the middle school schedule is the same. It should be predictable and easy for parents to figure out no matter what grade level their child is going to. And then we have them side by side so you can see. Notice that the colors are consistent and predictable across grade levels. That makes it easier on everybody involved, teachers, students, and guardians and parents. Done before. We're moving.
I'm sorry, I keep losing my microphone. I just need to stay unmuted at this point. The next thing we want to talk about is defining the learning objectives. So think about your course content and your objectives, and make sure that your learning objectives align with that and that your assessments align with those. Extra content that isn't directly related to the learning objectives should be removed or made optional. This doesn't mean that you can't do anything fun. You'll see a couple of examples of fun extra things in the class that Kelly and I did, but remember that if you're doing something extra, it should be optional. So think about your students and what they need to understand. What are they expected to learn? How are they going to know that? How are you going to know that they're learning it? And how are they going to get the content that you're sharing? So just as a one example, I want to share with you some of our objectives from first grade computer science. These are the standards from the Computer Science Teachers Association, the 2017 revised standards. And basically I took those standards and broke them down into objectives that students can understand. So decomposing steps to solve a problem is I can break a big problem into smaller ones, develop plans that describe a program sequence of events, goals, and expected outcomes. I can put steps in order to solve a problem, debug errors in an algorithm or program that includes sequences and simple loops. I can find and fix problems in my program, and make sure that you have those posted, that they're everywhere that students can find them. When my husband makes his Google slide deck that he shares with his students, his objective that he's currently working on is always in the right-hand column, and students never have to wonder what they're trying to be learning or thinking about, because it's always right there for them.
Prompt feedback. Now this one is key, whether we're in the classroom or online. So provide prompt feedback to kids. Doing so reinforces important materials, concepts, and skills. Providing timely feedback have students, they can apply anything that you may have said to them during the course, not 6 weeks later. Okay, couple tips. Let students know you're available for questions and comments. We did this a lot in Ann Arbor. We would have I'd have bi-weekly office hours where my kids could pop in and ask me questions if they needed help with an assignment. Okay. Make sure you provide prompt and detailed feedback. This is a best practice no matter whether we're in the classroom or online. I think most of you already know that. And consider allowing kids the opportunity to try an assignment more than one time. Redos are okay, especially when it's online. It's hard for kids to get something right if they don't understand the tool that they're using, or they're not understanding how to use the learning management system. And they do understand the task at hand from the course that you're teaching. A couple really nice links, guys. The Teach Thought article and feedback is very handy. I'd also highly recommend The Feedback Loop is Critical in Assessment by Sarah Van Loo.
The reason I had to pull that in there, I have to admit, as I was reading these and looking at the links Kelly provided that are great, I was thinking, man, what was that really large research-based, like, journal entry that I read, and I realized, oh my goodness, it's 110 pages. I can't link to that, but I do know where I talked about that and said exactly what I needed to. And I want to jump in on this one because I never got a chance to try again when I was in school. That just wasn't a thing where I grew up. Like, I did it. I tried my best to get that A, and if I didn't, well, one, I didn't necessarily learn from that, and two, I was just done. So it was amazing when I went back into education is the first time really that I had that opportunity to iterate on a thought and iterate on an idea. And my husband and I, he's one of our facilitators tonight, and Kelly and I have been talking about this presentation and how many times we've worked on it, because that's real life. And if you don't get a chance to try again in real life, wow, what a bummer. So let's give that opportunity to our students too, because it really lets them see how they can grow and own their own work. So thanks for letting me jump in, Kelly.
Oh, of course. This is just a quick example. I know that sometimes redos are difficult, especially online, but a lot of LMSs have built-in opportunities for that. For example, this is a post in Seesaw where the teacher can send back the assignment and have the kids redo it and then turn it back in again. And other platforms allow that as well. So consider that. Letting the kid try it again. LMS means learning management system. Sorry. And I see that in the chat. Yeah. Please consider having kids try things again. In real life, nobody is perfect, and it's best if we learn from our mistakes. Okay. So we're finished with the sixth one.
All right, so our next topic of discussion is engaging students. It's different when your students are online, and whether you're in person, online, face-to-face, hybrid, remote, whatever you want to call it, wherever your students are in relation to where you are, the quality of the interaction between your students, or I should really say among your students, is a sign of a successful class. So it's not just how you relate with your students, but how do they relate with each other, and how do they relate with your course? Create educational experiences for students that are challenging, enriching, and extend their academic abilities. They're going to be more engaged if they have to work a little bit. Provide students with opportunities to interact with their peers, such as through discussion and group work. And we know it's a little more challenging when they're online, but it is possible. So a couple of things to think about. Engage your kids with discussion. I did not put this in a helpful link, but talk moves is something that Kelly and I worked on, and anybody else that's been through NGSS training. So I'm just kind of putting our facilitators up to a little challenge there. Talk moves, and some of you have already heard of that, and it's a great questioning strategy. Try using something fun to get their attention. Yes, school can be fun. And check out a few of these links. There's Getting Started with Flipgrid, and I'm going to show you a quick example of Flipgrid in a second. Google Meet, so much like Zoom, you can meet with your students in a community meeting kind of aspect. Edpuzzle and Kahoot. So there are great resources for getting started with these different tools. This is an example of Flipgrid, and I will tell you the reason that I haven't used an example of my own students is because of privacy issues, and I just wanted to show you what this can really look like. So Flipgrid is like using a threaded discussion, but with video. And so you as the educator, you as the teacher, you get to post a prompt, and students have some kind of a time limit in which they reply to the prompt. And so each of these students in this example from Flipgrid, used with their permission, each of these students has responded to the prompt somehow, and you can see that in a Snapchat kind of way, they get to add filters and things. So it's really fun and engaging for them. They do have a time limit, or you can set a time limit, and that is very useful. It helps to constrain responses a little bit. And then you can see maybe right here under Carrie, it says that there are 3 comments. So 3 other people have responded to her video. And I want to tell you, as a student myself several years ago, working on my master's degree, this was how we finished our final portfolio. Each week we would have a different prompt. We posted to the prompt, talked about what it was that we wanted feedback on, and then other people in our class would respond. And at first I was extremely stressed out about this. Like, getting a video done in 2 minutes was so hard, and I wanted to be able to write. But I realized as time went on that it became extremely freeing, and I was able to convey a lot more quickly than I would have otherwise. And the best part was, and this is something to think about if you are remote, the best part was I got to my graduation and I knew everyone in my class, even though I had only met about a dozen of them in person. I knew everyone because of Flipgrid. So it is free. I'm not selling it. It's free. It's awesome.
All right, build community online. This is another one. So a strong classroom community can make all the difference. So make sure, guys, that you create educational experiences for students that give them a sense of ownership, and allow the class to decide what the online class rules or norms they should follow should be. Provide students with the opportunities to set goals for themselves, and then provide students choices in how they complete a task. For example, consider using choice boards in a lesson. We have a couple links. Again, we love that Flipgrid, so that's right there. And a couple things that creative ways teachers are building community online. And then I have a couple examples on the next slide. So these are actually from my schools. I teach at 2 schools, and silly, fun little things like the Bitmoji Classroom. I helped my friend Dawn build this, and the kids had so much fun with this. It really brought them all in. And this we did in March, not too long after we ended up going home. Okay. Another thing that we did at my other school was Spirit Week. Now, a simple thing like Spirit Week gives kids something to look forward to, especially when they've been trapped on their house for far too long and they're starting to get a little bit bored. These are all fun little things that kids can take a picture and turn it in and share it with the group, and then they can all discuss. It's really highly entertaining if you haven't tried it already. And we're done with 8. Now, this one is one that I think that teachers tend to ignore, and especially my partner there over there. Some of us work a little too much. I think a lot of us work a little too much. Some of us work ourselves to death. So please practice self-care. An organized, conscientious teacher can make all the difference. So consider yourself first. I know that we never do that, but maybe we need to start. Allow yourself to learn along with the kids. You do not have to know every digital tool out there. You can learn with the children. Keep it simple. Don't take on too much at a time. Couple little tips. Make sure you have a home workspace that you can organize and find things, and everything that you need is in one spot. Use a whiteboard or a good old-fashioned notebook to keep track of your ideas, and create a schedule that meets the needs of your family as well as your class. Now we have lots of links here because, again, I think this is one of the areas that teachers skip. So what it looks like to teach from home, the value of educator self-care from teaching tolerance. That's a nice little webinar that was just last week. That's actually excellent if you haven't seen that before. And A Moment for Teachers, Self-Care for Busy Teachers by Alice Langholt. And that's a free book that you can get on Kindle because we like free because we're public school teachers.
Oh, I went too fast.
Yes, that's Sarah's little workspace because mine is my kitchen table, which is not especially exciting.
Mine couldn't be because when we started remote learning, I was in the middle of the dining room trying to facilitate Seesaw presentations, and my teenagers are wandering through the background. I had to do something.
Yes. And I want to mention that one little quote right there. So if you're a Brene Brown fan like I am, make sure you talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. Guys, take care of yourselves.
It's pretty good. I know it's really easy for me to say nice things to you and to Bill and to all of our facilitators. And sometimes I forget to take time to do that for me.
You do. Down with 9. Woohoo, we're moving. All right.
Which means that we hopefully will have a little time for Q&A. And Kelly and I have some tech tools at the end that we would love to share with you if we have time. And we were concerned that we wouldn't have enough time to do that. So we'll see what we have here.
Yes. So we're now into our 10th suggestion, and that is to support diverse learners. And I wanted to mention SIOP, which is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And this tool has been around for a while, actually. It's very wonderful. And it's a research-based and validated instructional model for lesson design and delivery. It's been proved effective in addressing the needs of English language learners throughout the United States, and its 8 components are right there. One of the things I will tell you is we teach in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We teach in a university town, so we have literally kids from all over the world. And like in my one building, I have, I think, 55 different languages spoken. So incorporating tools such as SIOP into your lessons makes life better for everyone involved. And it actually helps the kids who are just native English speakers just as much as it does the second language kids.
And that's a really nice lead into universal design for learning, because it's kind of similar in that I love this quote. This is from one of their videos, a cast video, and I'll show you their website in just a second here. But universal design for learning is a framework that recognizes that all students are unique and have unique learning needs. So they say in one of their sources, every student's learning style is as unique as their fingerprint. So design curriculum with supports in place with the goal that students learn to internalize these 3 elements. And I'm going to kind of pop over to their website for a minute and give you a quick glance at this whole framework, because otherwise it doesn't make a ton of sense. But one of the things that they say is if you design for those in the margins, and they're talking about a building with ramps and like basically anything that would support someone with a wheelchair or a stroller or whatever, it's going to be better for everybody. So if you design for those in the margins, your building works better for everyone. Very similar to what Kelly was saying about SIOP. If you put some strategies in place to support your students who need them, they will help everybody. So what I want to do for just a second is pop over to their website, because I think that it makes it a little easier to show it. So this is linked from right here. And UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, talks about the why, the what, and the how of learning. If you are talking about the why of learning, you want to engage your students. And as you move down the framework, you talk about first providing access for your students. Then you're building the skills and strategies. Finally, you're teaching your students, they're moving to the point where they start to internalize these things. And the goal is that your students are purposeful and motivated. And you can say the same thing for representation, which is the what of learning. So how do you represent information to your students in a way that works for everybody? And examples, customizing the display of information, offering alternatives for auditory information, offering alternatives for visual information. So if you're using closed captioning, or you're providing visuals and diagrams for students who struggle with reading, then you are providing supports that work for everybody. So same thing here, you're moving down the framework where initially you're having to put some strategies in place for them to gain access, but then they're building the skills and eventually moving toward the point of internalizing. So this internalizing area is our goal for students who then are resourceful and knowledgeable. And finally, multiple means of action and expression. And as a former art teacher and current STEAM teacher who teaches engineering and other project-based learning, I am all about this. When you give your students choice in how they tell you what they've learned, you really unlock things for a lot of students, because maybe for today, writing an essay might not be the answer. And granted, if that's the skill that you're trying to teach, then that's what you're going to have to focus on. However, if you're in a class where it can be flexible, letting your students express their learning in different ways is going to help you have grow students who are strategic and goal-directed. This website is fantastic. There are downloads here. You can download the framework in multiple different options. You can watch videos. There's a book here. What I love about the book is it totally employs all of the strategies that they're trying to teach you. So UDL can support students with IEPs, students who are lower socioeconomic status, all kinds of reasons why you might find that using UDL in your classroom could be helpful. So I think captions turned off. I'm going to just turn those back on. There we go. So that's UDL. Another thing, and Kelly can chime in if she wants to, we wanted to talk for a minute about equity and inclusion. And if you've been on Twitter, you may have seen this infographic pop up recently. This really speaks to my heart. A couple of quick tips that we want to talk about. Provide asynchronous options, so videos, audio recordings, and other resources for students who are absent from synchronous instruction. We don't know what's going on with our students when they're not at school. We don't know if they're caring for a sibling, if their parents are sick. We don't know if they are at work. We don't know what's going on, but we don't want them to miss out on their education because they missed out on the class. So try to provide asynchronous options. And you could consider using your videos during your lessons, and then that lets you watch your chat while you're doing that. I'm not sure where I saw this exactly. I think it just kind of got into my head from the conversation on Twitter, this idea of community creation versus consequences. And this really relates to this infographic, which I think I made it so that if you click on this, it'll open it up. If not, click on this link here. And this PhD released this freely, so that's why we've accessed it here. Well, the heart of this is thinking about how to engage your students so that they want to be in your class, they want to participate, and how you can ensure that they're there and active without requiring them to turn on their cameras. We don't know why students aren't turning on their cameras, and it's really, once you require a student to turn on their camera, you are asking them to open their home to you, and that is a very personal request. And I would encourage you to see if you can find another way to go about ensuring that your classes are connected. You could ask questions in the chat, ask them to respond to those, or just ask them to unmute and check in once in a while. There are different things that you can do. So check out this link right here. And then the other thing that we wanted to talk about was moving past the idea of multicultural education and striving toward culturally responsive teaching practices. And there are a couple of great resources here. In fact, Gonzalez on the Cult of Pedagogy has a couple of articles about culturally responsive teaching. And basically what this means is it's a good start to have diverse representation in your courses. But if you start to really embrace and understand how a student is going to respond to you based on their culture, then you can not only help them learn better, but you can also let them basically affect the entire class. And Kelly, I don't know if you want to pitch in on, is there anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to mention, if you haven't looked up the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond, you can check out her website there. That's the last link on the page. And again, her book is brilliant if you haven't had a look at it.
Thank you. All right, so we're getting there. We're at number 11, exercise quality ed tech practices. Okay, now I've seen some Go Blue in the chat. I know there are some U of M folks in this room. That's okay. If you are, you probably know the Triple E framework. You may have heard of SAMR, but there are different frameworks for ed tech integration. And what I want to talk about for a minute, because this was produced at my alma mater, is TPAC. So this is just one example of a framework. TPAC is technological pedagogical content knowledge. And your technological knowledge is that knowledge that you have of your technology. It could be your whiteboard, it could be your computer, it could be whatever applications you're using, anything that is encompassed in that word technology. There's also your content knowledge. You know your English language arts really well. You know your painting techniques really well, whatever it is. And then there's your pedagogical knowledge. So you're thinking about grouping strategies, or are students going to be working independently? Are you going to do a think, pair, share? All those kinds of things that might be encompassed in pedagogy. Everywhere that those places overlap, you start to have like technological pedagogical content knowledge and technological content knowledge. But right here in the middle, where everything works together and it kind of like sings, that's your sweet spot. That's where you want to be in terms of your tools. And the other thing that you always have to think about is the context that all of that is sitting in. So for example, if you are adopting, I have to be careful here. If you're adopting a new tool and you are teaching kindergarten remotely, it's probably going to be a different tool than you would adopt with 10th grade in person, because your context is so different. So as you are implementing tools, you don't have to go down this checklist, but just kind of think about these things. What kinds of devices do your students have? What apps are available? What apps make sense for the situation? What's your content? Good pedagogy extends from the classroom to technology, and your pedagogy is going to be different. I taught K through 12 one year, literally K through 12, and the pedagogy that I exercised in my general education K1 classroom was different than in my high school special education classroom. So think about your pedagogy, that's always with you. And then your context, again, are you teaching online? Are you teaching face-to-face? Or are you in a blended learning situation? And what grade do you teach? it's possible that you could, just as a quick example, you could decide we want to do some microblogging and we're going to use Twitter at the high school level. But if you want to do some group threaded discussions at the elementary level, you could use Flipgrid for videos. You could use Seesaw for a threaded discussion. There are different options that you might use at the elementary level. And again, SAMR, S-A-M-R, and the 3E, Triple E framework are just two other examples of frameworks you might use as you're deciding on your technology. Okay, our last one, and Kelly's in my PLN, so she can jump in at any point if she wants to, but your PLN is your professional or personalized learning network. And basically what you're doing with your PLN is leveraging your social media and leveraging this group of educators that we're surrounded by who have really pretty brilliant ideas all the time, and using them. So if you want to read about why you should do this, there's this article, it's from 2013, but it's still fairly relevant, by Teach Thought, and just a couple of ways to get started. And I'll give you some examples from our group here. One, you can join the NEA Ed Communities. If you're a member of ISTE, you could join the ISTE PLN. If you decide you want to check out Twitter for the first time, there are 8 connected educators in this room that you could, I keep saying in this room, I feel like you're all with me. 8 connected educators that are in this room. We have all of their Twitter handles if you want to follow them. They post great stuff. And you can create a connected network of other teachers in your school district. I don't recommend email necessarily, but you could use the G Suite. For example, Kelly and I both teach the same curriculum. And When we went to remote learning, we were able to employ a teacher learning network on a new level like we had never done before in our district. We had regular meetings, we shared ideas. We did that before, but this need to support each other during remote learning was at a new level. And it was amazing because it went over so well. A lot of teachers asked if we could keep those for the future. We are adopting a new learning management system. We happen to be moving to Schoology right now, and Schoology allows you to create groups. So that's another way you can use, I keep looking at the chat. That's another way that you can use your learning management system in order to create a teacher learning network. Seesaw Teachers is just one of, I think, like, is it 5 or 6, Kelly, Seesaw groups that she and I are following. And if there is some other app or other thing that you're interested in, you're going to find them on Twitter or on Facebook too. Pinterest, even if you want to learn about projects, whatever, you can find all kinds of stuff on Pinterest. So Kelly, do you want to add anything here before I keep going?
You covered it, Sweet Pea.
Okay. Kelly is a main component in my teacher learning network. So yeah, so please, I recommend this a lot. 2 years ago, time has lost meaning. A year and a half ago, I was able to go to ISTE for the first time. 2.5 years ago, I wasn't at ISTE, but I was following all kinds of people that were at ISTE, so I could kind of like learn through them a little bit. So it's a great way to share resources. And I want to refer you back to the infographic on the other slide with the information about the camera on or off. I learned that on Twitter. So I totally recommend it. All right, so we got through these 12. We are at 7:48. So I'm gonna look at Kelly here on my screen. We have some favorite tools. Should we each pick one of our favorite tools?
Yeah, one.
And then it's like the opening presents the night before the holiday, just one. Okay. So anybody who knows me knows that this is the one I'm going to talk about. I am a K-5 educator. Before I did that, I was a middle school teacher as well, a high school teacher as well, actually, and I used Google Classroom a lot. But in elementary school, this is the tool for me. I love Seesaw. The quotes, this is from the Seesaw website. It's a platform for student engagement. I could not agree more. It's an amazing tool. Teachers can share lessons, they can share activities with students, they can post announcements. I haven't used Dojo, but I'm going to say that Seesaw does not include a point system, which actually directly relates to my teaching style. One of the things in our new LMS is badges, and I'm not a badge awarder except as a relationship builder. So I think Seesaw is, I want to say the bee's knees. I think Seesaw is the best thing. Kelly and I have presented about Seesaw a lot, and I would say every time, if I could only use one tool in a year, it would be Seesaw. And I've probably stolen Kelly's too, but
That's okay.
we'll find something else to talk about. So you can share announcements, lessons, activities with students and families. Students have multiple different tools that are built right into Seesaw that they can use to show what they know. They can take photos, they can upload videos, they can draw, and guess what? They can do all of those things on one slide. They can add little text boxes, they can write on it, and they can add their voice when they're totally finished. They can talk about what they know, which is really great for I use Seesaw K through 5. Seesaw can be used in middle school and high school, especially as a support for English learners and students who are struggling readers. So you can use it really as a support for your students as well. And it really enhances the school to home connection. You're welcome. You can take photographs in the classroom and share them with families through the app. And this is what I found as a long-time special area teacher. I didn't have that face-to-face, like frontline relationship that classroom teachers had with families. But the families that connected through Schoology, or I saw Schoology on the chat, the families who connected through Seesaw were the ones who knew me and knew what was happening in the classroom. So I totally recommend it. And I will say, as of Friday, Seesaw created an option where you can create a link for students directly to the student activity. And that activity link can be then posted in Google Classroom or whatever LMS. So we're looking at how we can do that in Schoology. So whether you're using Edmodo or Canvas or whatever learning management system, you can now get links directly for students that you can put into your learning management system. Kelly and I, if you Google Seesaw training, actually it's right there. It is a great resource for getting started. You can use Seesaw kindergarten all the way through college. It is more of a stream-based kind of thing. So they've just added some features where you can organize and filter and use folders that I haven't even had a chance to explore yet. You might want more organization at the high school level than you can get with Seesaw, but I don't want to say that for sure now that they just added these new resources and I haven't been able to look at them yet. Yeah. Okay.
Sarah, I think a lot of you know and love Google Classroom. Google Classroom is another lovely LMS or learning management system that helps you as a teacher communicate with students and families. It helps you organize your assignments and grade everything. Again, we love Google Classroom as well. It's another wonderful, wonderful resource. I'm going to quickly, maybe Sarah, can I do 2? Do you think we have time to do Meet too?
For you, yes.
And my next,
just stop.
That's good. My next one is Meet, and honestly, any video conferencing tool that lets me actually see and speak to my kids in real time makes my life better. I miss my students. I've been in my same schools for 5 years now. I've watched my kids grow up, and it's hard when I can't see them, and it's hard when I can't talk to them. Meet is a fabulous tool, and Meet has actually made a ton of improvements over the summer. If you had some rough spots last spring, you might be pleasantly surprised this fall. That would be one of the things I would tell you about. We have a lot of nice little links down at the bottom so you can have a peek at those, and then do go and check out the Google website for the lovely updates to Google Meet.
So Kelly, what do you think at this point? Should we
Say
just
we could
kind
probably
of
take 6 minutes of questions if that's
breeze
okay.
through? Yeah, I just want to show you what's still in here. The Google Suite, Nearpod, Pear Deck. By the way, Nearpod and Pear Deck are very similar. Kelly has compiled this awesome list of video resources. I threw in a couple, but she pretty much had it covered. These are all great. And they do cover K through 12. I don't know if you want to take a second particularly to point out the high school ones, Kelly.
Love Crash Course in particular for secondary and Khan Academy for secondary. That's me, and TED Ed in particular for secondary. Those would be my 3 favorites for older kids. But of course, I'm an elementary school teacher, so I had to put in Brain Pop and Go Noodle and some fun ones for our littles as well.
Good deal. All right. I am seeing a really great question about social emotional learning. And that is true. We could be working on this and adding a lot of things. And I want to point out, I think that it doesn't really fit under that umbrella of diverse learners, but social emotional learning is critical. And one of the things that here in Michigan, typically our legal start date is after Labor Day. And this year that would have been after September 8th. So we typically would be starting really late. We're actually going to start a little bit earlier this year with our professional development. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in the first couple weeks is the critical importance of social emotional learning and how we can work on some of these social emotional lessons and embed them kind of with our technology lessons. But I'm speaking of this very vaguely because I don't know the entire agenda yet. Does that sound right to you, Kelly? Yeah. That's how I'm picturing it, that we're going to really check in with our students, find out how they're doing. Not what they're doing, not what they did all summer, but how are they doing? Because it's been hard on everybody to be away from school for so long. And we are, by the way, we didn't say this, but Kelly and I and many of the people on this chat that are facilitating for us, we know that we are starting remotely. And so we're making plans for that and learning a new learning management system while we're starting remotely. So we're going to be doing lessons and activities that check in on our students and let them learn this new learning management system at the same time, like scavenger hunts on the system and different things like that. By the way, Kelly and I made another presentation together using your own videos. That's one way that you can work on that connection to your students, is letting them see your face and hear your voice. If you want to learn more than you ever thought you needed to know, click on that link to learn more, and you are welcome to have that.
Sure.
So just quickly, I want to point out that the exit ticket is here. Remind you that this webinar has been recorded and it'll be available in the NAE Ed communities. NEA, I can speak, in the NEA Ed communities. Again, you can get a copy of this presentation depending on whether you want to download it and save a copy of it or whether you want to open it up like a website. You can use one of these 2 links. And we're at 7:57, and Kelly and I would love to open up the lines for questions. And
Sarah, I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Yes, Anne.
I wanted to give George an opportunity to sort of close us out. And then if folks have questions, we can stay for a little bit and answer, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time as well. So George?
Okay, I'll try to make this a very short reflection. First, of course, thanks Kelly and Sarah for sharing a framework for developing quality online practice. I know that as professionals, each of us wants to do a quality job. And as NEA President-elect Becky Pringle says, we must be worthy of our babies. You probably know that for years, public education in Finland has been celebrated as best in the world. You might also know that the Finns did not set out to create the best schools. They set out to create the most equitable ones. And that must be our focus. It has to be intentional or it doesn't happen. So in this time when people were becoming conscious that Black Lives Matter, I was particularly happy that the 2 of you took time to discuss principle number 10, including universal design for instruction and culturally appropriate instruction. We're never going to return to business as usual. We'll use the things that we learned during this pandemic to ensure that public education emerges stronger and more equitable than ever before. And with that, Anne, back to you.
Thanks so much, George. We also wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the many questions are coming out about the professional development in those pieces. Is there another slide or not? No. Yes, there we go. I'm happy to talk this through, but I wasn't sure if someone else was prepared to do so.
I say go for it, Anne.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so many of you have been asking about certificates, and I apologize last time we were not ready for that question, which shame on us, we should have been. And many, I think I got about 300 emails from members looking for certificates. So what we have done is we have uploaded those. We have created a space in our own learning management system at the NEA that will allow you to create an account to go in and to download the certificate. You do not have to rewatch the webinar to be able to download the certificate. There will be a special, I think there's a code, isn't there, Jen? I don't remember what it is though. I should remember this. Is it here?
I believe it's Marigold.
Actually, for this one, it is rainbow.
Rainbow.
Rainbow. Okay, so you click in rainbow, and it will be, that was an interesting choice.
If you look at my agenda slide, it'll kind of make sense.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of want, like,
And
how can
same
I
thing-
do this?
Absolutely. If you were not here, or if you needed a certificate for last week, you can also go in and do that there within the LMS. If you want to do all of this, then you can find the directions of how to do this in a couple of different places. You can go to the www.nea.org/webinars, and there is a link to how to do all of that. If you don't want a certificate, if you just want to see the presentation and the recording, that is also at that same URL. If you have colleagues that you think would benefit from seeing this presentation, they can actually watch it in the LMS and download a certificate themselves. So that is available for you to do as well. And that may be clear as mud. If it's not clear, please ask the questions and we'll make sure it's there, but we try to create step-by-step. If you have problems with it working, then you'll want to email memberrapidresponse@nea.org. I don't know if we put that anywhere. Let's put that in the chat. memberrapidresponse@nea.org. Okay, Jen or anyone, did I forget anything? Is it rainbow or rainbows?
Rainbow.
Rainbow, okay. All right, so that's all of those important things that people care about, and our facilitators can stay on for a little bit and we can answer some questions as we can, and the rest of you have a great evening. And Sarah and Kelly, thank you so much. There's a lot of great resources here and lots of people were really excited to see what you had to say. So thank you everyone, and we will see you next time. For those of you that
Thank you, Anne.
yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yes, thank you. So I see the numbers dropping off and I get it. So Kelly and I will hang out. We have some
We had a
amazing
couple-
facilitators online.
Yeah,
with us,
thank you,
too.
everybody who helped, because we couldn't have done that by ourselves. Absolutely.
No, I can
Not
barely
a
handle
chance.
15.
Uh-uh.
And if there's any of our facilitators that are here, if you see an answer, like you know the answer to that question, please jump in.
Yeah.
Kelly, you were going to answer a question now. I can
Well,
see
I
it.
see that there's, what platform did Sarah use for her remote learning PLN? So let's answer that one live.
Okay, so I think Kelly and I have very similar experiences. I built up my Twitter PLN a little bit at a time, and I have to admit that well, I don't have to admit, my husband is also a teacher. He was a teacher before me. He was on Twitter before me, and he was my Twitter coach as I got started with Twitter. So the first thing that I did was signed up. I followed him and some other teachers as I was working my way through my program program at Michigan State, using Twitter was actually a requirement. And at first I found it to be really uncomfortable. Like, I just didn't like talking about myself that much, but eventually got to be like, okay, this is just how it is. And what I found using Twitter, and I think a lot of people have probably similar experiences, is that as I liked and commented on certain things, Twitter's really good at recommending other people who are kind of in the same vein. Like, I will often get recommendations for people who are other STEAM educators at the elementary and middle school levels. And if I see that somebody's responded to a tweet and it's something that I think is interesting, I will jump right in there and often follow them. And I just kind of try to keep it moving. Like, I try not to let it get stagnant, because it's nice to see new things. We have created webinars for Seesaw. We have presented them at several levels, and actually Kelly and I are working on a beginning Seesaw video course
for the NEA.
NEA, and we're really close. We're really close.
Next week.
And yeah, and I totally recommend it. Kelly has some great links to Flipgrid inside the video. Padlet, Padlet's not hard to use. I kind of just figured it out. There's got to be a good Padlet recommendation.
You can go look for one real fast. Can we do Jane's question? So Jane's asking any recommendations for combining SEL with STEAM. So I'm going to click answer that one live. Jane, so STEAM with distance learning, and then social emotional learning. I would definitely make sure you talk about perseverance with kiddos and the struggle of getting things perfect every time. Seesaw has a ton of social emotional lessons built in to their activity library. If you haven't taken a peek at that, I would highly recommend that you do that. I think turn taking and understanding how to communicate are all extremely key in STEAM. Sarah, jump in if you have anything else to add there.
Nope, I think you're doing great.
Yes. But communication skills, a big one. And that kids are struggling with that since they aren't actually having to communicate with people outside of the kids that are in their house. So lots of time with communication, in my opinion. Pre-K suggestions. Again, I'm going to go with Seesaw for that one. I love Seesaw for the littles. One of the things I would say is that they can respond verbally when they can't necessarily write an answer, and that's a wonderful little tool that if you haven't taken a peek at Seesaw, that's probably my first choice for pre-K.
Yeah, and Kelly, I blanked for a second, and did you mention the community library in Seesaw?
Yeah, I said they have a ton of social emotional learning lessons built into the Seesaw community library, guys, and hundreds of them. I wish I was exaggerating. I am not.
And that Seesaw with their community activities also kind of gets to the heart of one of the questions that somebody answered earlier. I saw scrolling through the chat, which was what is one way to work with really young children and not have them be on the screen too much. And I think that anything that surrounds like structured play is a good way to do that. Kelly and I facilitated a session for the curriculum that we teach last week, and one of the challenges is to build a beanstalk. And we've typically in the past in person done that with pipe cleaners that we can provide to our students, but we were doing this with adults who had to just go find stuff around the house and build their structures. And you can give any kinds of STEAM and STEM challenges like that to students. Ask them to go make observations and then come back and talk about what they saw. And that's a good way to have students exercising these lessons without having to just be at a computer typing responses or even just saying responses. What have we missed?
I'm going to jump in for a second. We have
Yes.
some people who are having certificate issues, and we are working out the kinks on the system. So
Okay.
be patient as we're figuring it out. And in some cases, it's not, for some reason, the course is not showing up in the library for some people, and then in other people it is. So if you run into these problems, then you're going to have to send us an email. I am on vacation this week. This is a great, it's a great way to spend my vacation with you guys, but I'm on vacation. I may not be the right person to send the email to. Let's go ahead and do it to Member Rapid Response, and then we'll make sure it gets to goes where it needs to go. And I put the email in the box there.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I saw the question, somebody may have answered this. Seesaw and Schoology are not the same thing.
Same thing. Yep, I was going to say that too.
Schoology, Edmodo, Canvas, Google Classroom are all examples of kind of like fuller learning management systems. A learning management system is going to be a place where your students can go to get the resources that they need to participate in your course. And Seesaw is not necessarily, it's not what I would call a learning management system. It is an outstanding communication tool between the teacher and students and between the teacher and the parents. And I'm showing you this class because these are all, I went a little overboard in the spring. This is a pretend class with pretend children who have pretend parents and everything. And the way that this works is you can add, as a teacher, you can put a post in your student's journal. So that could be that you're taking a picture in the class and JL and Hannah are playing nicely together. They're working, like they're collaborating on a project, and you snap a picture. They both have photo rights, and you tag both of them in that photo, and then their parents, their families see it at home later on their family app. You can assign an activity. If you have an activity for your students, and some of these are on the fly examples during professional development, an activity should have some nice clear instructions. Seesaw is nice because you can build in all these little icons, and this right here where it says play instructions means that I have recorded my voice reading these instructions to students. So this is a fantastic example of universal design for learning. You are hitting multiple modalities by using these symbols for your students who might struggle with reading. You're using the instructions recorded for students who might struggle with reading. And then what students do when they're ready to is they click add response. And again, this is not a real class. That's why 23 of my pretend students haven't answered. But you can open up the activity and you can see all your students in a grid, and you can see who has done what. And of course, 23 of these gray examples haven't been done. If I hadn't reviewed this yet, it would say waiting for review, or is that what it says, Kelly? I forget. Pending or pending teacher review, something like that.
Waiting for teacher approval.
Waiting for teacher approval,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I look at it, I see it, and I don't remember what it says. So that's Seesaw kind of in a nutshell. You can also send announcements to all of your students, all your families, all of your students and your families, or you can message individual family members. Unfortunately, you can't message individual students, but I know teachers work around that. And if you're interested, I can tell you how.
We have 2 questions about special education.
Let
and
me
I might,
stop you real quick.
Yep,
because
okay.
I just need a realization, and I'm slowly more people are going off.
yeah.
It's going to be in the catalog yet because we haven't uploaded the recording. I didn't realize that like 500 people ago. We need like 24, 48 hours, then it will be in the catalog. That is completely my fault. I was like, I'm still on vacation brain. But it will be up once we get it in the LMS. The one from last week is there now. So I apologize for interrupting again. I won't.
It's okay. Interrupt as many times as you need to.
Yeah. Last week's code word was marigold, right? This week's the rainbow.
I think we actually put last week's with no code word.
Okay.
I'm concerned that people hear the code word. So,
Yeah.
What's the code word? Yeah, no problem, Anne. Interrupt us as many times as you need to. And
Yeah, I don't mind.
if you don't have like the structure of all the world in your brain at once, that's okay.
Well,
It
I
was-
appreciate that. What I am going to say though is let's just give it a couple more minutes to maybe
Okay.
answer a couple more questions and then let's wrap.
Yeah,
Right.
Kelly was starting to answer this question about medically fragile and
Yeah.
disabled students, and she's going to take this one because she's a
I was
she's a
going to say
wizard.
that I know that we have a scaffolding workshop coming up that would speak to that a little bit more in detail than what we did tonight. And I believe that's coming up. Isn't that in one of
I
the
think
three-part
that's next
series?
week, right?
So I would definitely encourage you to go visit that one. And actually, some of the people that are running our chat will be leading that session. And then we have one more quick question about closed captioning. How do you do that in Zoom? Sarah, since you just did it.
Let's see. I did it in Google. I did it actually in the Google Slides, and I will show how to do that again in the Google Slides. So I'm going to start this from the beginning, not the slide deck, but I have my slide deck, and I can see my friends that are up there. I have the slide deck now just in edit mode. When I click present, and this was brand new to me tonight, so this was cool. When I click present, then I get my speaker options. And can you see the speaker options? Okay. And then right here, one of the options is captions. And there's an arrow here, so I'm going to guess that if I clicked that, I would have some choices. There we go. Text position, text size, and you can make it small, medium, large. But if you want to just use the whatever is already set, then you can click on CC and it will start recording. Now, one thing that I observed today while Kelly and I were here presenting, I had the presentation open, and in the interest of time, we were not handing it back and forth, which meant because my computer wasn't, I have headphones on and the audio was coming through my headphone speakers, it wasn't picking up her voice on the second, like when she was talking and it was in presenter mode here. So one thing to think about if you share a presentation with a partner is maybe either having time to pass the presentation back and forth, or in my case, if I didn't have my headphones on, but I did that for the sake of everybody here because we have 3 kids and a dog, and it's just better that way. So that's how you do that. And I think you can do closed captioning in Google Meet as well.
I'm typing it in for Zoom too here. Yeah.
So for Zoom, I know there's a plugin that you
Yeah.
can get for
And-
closed captioning.
There is. I'm putting the support site in. If you go to the support site, there's a little video on how to do that.
In Zoom, Kelly?
In Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it's I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is not hard to do in Google Meet either. In fact, it's actually pretty easy. I just can't remember off the top of my head. It looks like our superstar, you guys are amazing on this chat. I'll be here next week on the chat for some of the people who are presenting next week. I hope I can serve them half as well as they did tonight with us.
All right. Well, as
Does
everyone
this mean
is,
we're out of questions?
we're out of questions and it's 8:17. So let's why don't we say goodbye? Thank you, everyone. And,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Jen, I can't believe I forgot.